Good morning. Want to also extend a welcome to those who are watching us by live stream this morning. The parable of the Good Samaritan is one of the most well-known parables of Jesus. It's even come down to us in a jingle. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. And perhaps you've had the opportunity to either help someone in need or to be helped by someone in need. I had an experience when I was just a little boy. My family went to Schaefer Lake and stayed for a week in a cabin there. And my other three brothers were off doing something with my dad. And I stayed behind, and there was this short pier in front of our cabin. And so I had found this long stick, and I went down and sat on the pier and pretend to fish. So I cast my line and pretend I've got a fish, and I cast my line and pretend to catch a fish. And then I cast my line just a little too far, and whoop, I fell in. The bad news is I did not know how to swim. To this day, I can picture myself under the water, struggling. And I don't swim yet. But all of a sudden, there was a big splash in the water. Someone had seen me fall in, and they ran and jumped in after me and caught me up, and set me on the pier, made sure that I was all right. My mother wasn't far away. She came running. Now, this was back in the 1960s. And the man who rescued me was African American. And back then, you might not have expected that kind of heroic action. Back then, you might not have wanted to be helped by such a person. Fortunately, things have changed greatly for the most part. But it's just like the Samaritan and the presumably Jewish man who was hurt. If he was conscious enough to know who was helping him, he might have said, "Get away from me." Because Samaritans and the Jews did not get along. They didn't touch one another. The person lying on the side of the road might have even thought, "I'd rather die than be helped by a Samaritan." And so the parable teaches us not only about reaching out in a spirit of neighborliness to help others, but it also teaches us that sometimes it's the person we least expect who's going to reach out to us and help us. When I was a young priest, a man came to the door of the rectory, and he looked rather disheveled, and he asked if he could talk to a priest, and well, here I am. So we went inside the office and sat down and talked. And he shared me the fact that he was a priest. And I was a little suspicious. He said he was a Jesuit. That made me more suspicious. And he had a drinking problem, and all he wanted was to get to the Great Lakes Naval Academy. He was a chaplain in the Navy. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, how am I going to get him to a bus or a train station, or, how are we going to do this? And I even went back into the office and talked to the secretaries about it. And I said, I think I'm going to take him myself. And say, oh no, Father, don't do that. You don't know who he is. But I had that sense within me that he was telling the truth. I could just tell. And so I drove him up to Great Lakes Naval Academy, and they knew who he was. They were very happy, grateful that I had brought him back. And for many years afterwards, I'd get a call from him at least once a year, again thanking me and telling me how he was doing. Now, stepping out of our comfort zone to reach out to help another person is not always easy. It may be in the old days, you wouldn't hesitate to stop by somebody who's on the side of the road to stop and help them. But today we tend to be a little more careful. What I would say is we have to be careful not to block out other people because of fear, because of what they look like, what kind of lifestyle they might live. As Jesus so often says, it's not for us to judge. He wants us to be courageous and trust that he places us in the lives of other people for a purpose. And just as Jesus himself, we are told in the second reading, was sent by God to save us, to reconcile us with God and one another, we too are called to be instruments of reconciliation and healing. And maybe it's not somebody on the side of the road. Maybe it's not a stranger knocking at our door. Maybe it's somebody in our own family, or in our workplace, or in our classroom who needs our help. The point is to pay attention, to not be so locked in on ourselves that we get blinded to the people around us. Jesus challenges us to open our eyes and recognize those in our midst who are most in need. One of the ways that we do that here at St. Mary's in such a beautiful way is our food pantry. People come and, they're in need of food, and, sometimes they might feel ashamed or something, but our wonderful volunteers make them feel welcome, respect their dignity. They don't ask many questions except how many people are in your household. They even provide them with the opportunity to choose some things on their own, to uphold their dignity as persons. It's a beautiful ministry. But again, God places people in our lives because Jesus said, whatever you do to the least of my brothers and sisters, you do to me. So let us pray for those eyes of compassion to see whom God has placed in our path, so that we might be instruments of healing and reconciliation to them, just as Jesus came to bring us healing and reconciliation.